Welcome, everybody. I'm Kristen Wharton. I'm a community health nurse at the Sawtooth Mountain Clinic, and I want to welcome everybody to this wonderful event tonight. We're so happy you're here, Supper from the Garden. We're really happy to have Jenny Breen here. She's a chef and nutrition advocate. We're going to spend the evening cooking together and enjoying more good food. We're also live streaming this for people at home. And this is the first time we've ever live streamed, and it's a cooking class. So we just set the bar really high for ourselves. But I do want to let people who are watching know that there are going to be, and you all as well, there are going to be time for questions as we cook. There will be questions and informal discussion, and then later on this evening as well. For anyone who's watching live streaming at home, we're happy to incorporate you into the conversation as well. To do this, we've created a live chat window in the video. So in order to participate in the live chat, you must have a Google account. So if you've already got a Google account, you can use that. Once you've logged into your account, click the YouTube logo in the right-hand corner of this video. That will open the tools for interaction. Now on the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see a chat window. Depending on the size of the screen, you may need to scroll down a little bit. This chat window is where you can send your messages, and we will monitor them and respond as quickly as we can. If you need any more clarification for people live streaming, you can also contact us at 218-370-8085, and we will catch up with you that way. This live video archive will also be immediately available for reviewing following the event. So if any of you had a great time or wanted to catch a recipe again or watch how we did something again, you can also be able to go online and watch it again right after the event. So thanks everyone for being here. I would like to introduce Jenny, and you know what? I don't have your bio or anything like that.
That's okay. I'll tell you.
But if you, would you mind sharing a little bit?
You'll just have to believe
about
me.
yourself too.
Sure. Hi, everybody. I am Jenny Breen, as Kristen said, and I am up from the cities, and I'm actually here. This will be the second of 3 different classes that I'm teaching here. So a lot of what I do, and I'm trying to face the camera while I also talk to you. So I'm configuring my body a little strangely. And I will be continuing to try and face the camera while we're in the kitchen too, which is going to be really interesting. So anyway, I live in Minneapolis. I am a chef and a nutritionist. So I was a chef first. I co-owned a Whole Foods restaurant in Minneapolis in 1996 to 2001. So back in the time when the whole kind of local food movement wasn't really happening yet. And it's just something that my business partner and I discovered. We started meeting because of we were both working in the restaurant world, and we started encountering local farmers who were supplying some of these restaurants, and became really interested in sourcing our food from them, because it meant that we were buying food from people we knew and had relationships with, which meant that we understood how they were treating the land that they were raising the food on, what was going into the food, in other words, whether they were using chemicals or not, possibly how they were treating the people who worked on their farm or the animals that lived on their farm. So it really felt important to us to have that relationship. And it was for me just a really amazing opportunity as the person doing the cooking to really know where that food was coming from and the story behind that food. And I really felt like that mattered. And we felt like it was our job in part to tell that story as we served the food. So without meaning to, we were already doing education. And what I learned early on was that people really like food and want to know about food, but that there was a really big disconnect between food and health. And a lot of people were not realizing the significant role that food plays in your health and your well-being. And amazingly, still, it's kind of a new concept in the world. So fast forward, we had our restaurant for 5 years. we both got married and had babies and decided restaurants and babies weren't compatible. So we sold our restaurant, but we continued to have a catering business for the next 20 and continued to work with local suppliers and do a lot of events at local farms, and it was really wonderful. But still, for me, eye-opening to recognize that the disconnect was still there. And then I went back and studied public health and nutrition, because to me, the health part was much more interesting than the food business part. I wasn't so interested in the food industry as I was in helping people make that connection. But I did believe that cooking and delicious food is a really important part of that, and that it's a lot easier to engage people about health and talk about health with people if it's enjoyable and satisfying too, right? So instead of me holding a food pyramid up in front of you and saying, you need 5 servings of this and, you know, and go home and figure that out, how about we cook together and you understand what it feels like to eat really nourishing food? And then maybe you'll go home and do that. So that's been kind of my mission for the last several years, is to use cooking as a way to help people get excited and engaged about eating well and eating for health, as well as for pleasure, because I don't think the two are that far apart. So I teach in a lot of different settings. I teach an undergraduate class at the University of Minnesota called Cooking on a Student's Budget. So that's for people who have recently started college, who may or may not have ever cooked for themselves before. They might be moving into an apartment for the first time. So really learning how to cook from scratch. We have a whole semester. We start with the basics, and we do as much as we can to get them to work with every kind of food that's out there and to understand from a nutritional perspective and from a budgetary perspective how to really set up their kitchens and feed themselves. I'm always amazed with college students at how much food they buy and food they eat out. I did not do that when I was in college. I don't know how they do, but they do. So we really just work on getting comfortable with cooking at home and setting up a kitchen that's functional. I also have started working with a doctor in the medical school at the university to teach health professional students, so people who are becoming nurses and doctors, to help them. And as you know, Kristen, I think, is one of these people who's ahead of the curve on this whole front, because we do have a lot of medical professionals who know very little about food and cooking and how to talk about that in relation to nutrition and health. And right now, in our society, almost all the illnesses that our doctors are dealing with are chronic diseases, which means they can be addressed and often reversed through diet and lifestyle changes. So it's a very, very critical connection for doctors to have, and something that is really just starting to happen around the country. So that's really exciting for me, because it feels like people trust their doctors. People go to their doctors and their clinics and their nurses for lifestyle advice and guidance. And if someone isn't able to really talk about these things and say, here's a great recipe for kale, or we have a cooking class coming up that you can participate in, then that connection might get missed. So that's really exciting work. And then I do a lot of work with schools also. So I'm working with school food service, helping them figure out how to incorporate more fresh foods. Yet another sector of society that hasn't always learned scratch cooking because of the way we've set up our systems. So that's all of the different kinds of work that I do. And Kristen, I think she read or saw something about some of the medical school teaching that I've been doing. Is that how you found me? No. Oh, all right, I lied.
But that's awesome too.
It was the Food Access Conference. Is that what it was?
Yeah, Tess Bailey,
okay.
who is the SNAP educator up in Grand Portage. Tess had connected with Jenny at some food access conferences, and Tess and I have been hatching plans together. And this is one of our plans, is this everyone eats beans. And so we're just kind of getting our feet, our toes into the water of trying to pick a vegetable and then offer classes in the community about, how do you plant beans, how do you save seeds from beans, how do you cook with beans, eat with beans. So this is one of the Everyone Eats Beans events. We actually have some free t-shirts. If anyone wants to take one, you're welcome to. But it was Tess that was really interested in getting Jenny up here. And in fact, you taught up in Grand Portage last night.
Yeah. So that was the first stop, and worked with, she's doing some pretty amazing work. They have an incredible garden up there and are really bringing fresh produce to the folks who live up there and teaching them what to do with it and getting people excited about fresh vegetables, which, if I and I started my conversation with them last night by saying this, if I had to say anything, I would just say eat as many vegetables as you can, really. And something I think that our nutrition world and our medical world has done, unfortunately, has made it really complicated for people to think that they understand what they need to do to eat healthy food. And so one of the things I try and do is make it really, really simple. Simple enough that it's really easy for a kid to understand it. And what I would say is, and maybe some of you have heard this if you follow Michael Pollan or if you've ever heard of him, this is a version of that, but just eat real food. Mainly foods that don't have an ingredient list, foods that come in their natural form. I'm not going to tell you how many calories you should think about. I'm not going to tell you how many grams of anything you should eat, because clearly that has not worked for the last 50 years. So I think it's a flawed system, because it's not a form that people can relate to, right? We eat food. We don't eat calories. We don't eat grams. We eat food. So what food should we eat? We should eat food that is food, that doesn't come processed or packaged. And if you do that most of the time, I would never say all the time, because we're also human and we like treats, and sometimes we just don't feel like thinking about it. But most of the time, if you focus on real ingredients, fresh foods, lots of vegetables, whole foods, I would say, and we can talk about what that means. Even when I work with kids, I talk about what whole foods are, because that feels like, again, the most basic information you should have. If you just start with that, most of it will follow. There's obviously other things. When we talk about the class that we teach for medical students, we talk about lifestyle. So diet and lifestyle. So diet is a part of lifestyle. There's also things like sleep. It's really important. Stress and how you deal with stress and how much stress you have, that can really affect your health too. So that it all works together. But my main area, my expertise really is around food and making it accessible, making it simple and delicious, so that the pleasure comes from just the deliciousness, and the benefit is just extra, right? The health benefit is just what you get because it's good for you. I would not tell you to eat something just because it's good for you if it wasn't good. If it wasn't delicious, because that's important. Pleasure and joy is a big part of it too. So that's kind of where I come from with this. I'm very interested in eating seasonal food. That's another really important part of what I teach about. And there's a few reasons for that. One is that it's what's going to be most flavorful and freshest, because it's in season and because it's probably coming from closest by, which means it wasn't picked before it was ripe and then put on a truck for 2 weeks, right? It came from someone down the street or down the road, so it's going to be fresh. Nutrients, for sure, disappear as we get further and further from when something is picked. Flavor, things are most delicious when they're fresh. And then there is this other piece around supporting a local food system or a local food economy, and that feels really important. for sustaining our communities. And you all live in a small community, so you know what that means. You know that if we aren't supporting the local folks who are doing the labor and the work to get things to us, like good food, then that will go away. And then other things will go away too. Not to mention that I think I have a reasonable mistrust of some of the large food businesses in our world, both for the environmental impact that they have on a global scale, and also for the fact that they prioritize cheapness over quality. And so what we get when we buy a lot of packaged and processed foods is not something that has been designed for maximum nutrition. Even though it might say that. It's something that's been designed to convince us that it's good for us while also being very, very cheap to produce. And there's all kinds of reverberations of that. So those are the reasons that I also like to work with local, fresh ingredients. Does anybody have any questions so far? Yeah.
I'm sorry, I apologize
no
for being
apologies.
a little late, but and I remember your credentials, but I was a home ec teacher and a health minor, and then I got my math degree, so I was teaching, and biochemistry.
Wow.
But they're cutting out in Minnesota a lot of the home economics programs, what they call family and consumer
Facts
science
now. It's facts now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I have watched some programs on the news, and it's amazing. It's like they're talking about this amazing program this man is doing a class after school for kids on nutrition, and then they're growing their own garden, kind of taking off of what Michelle Obama has done. But I'm thinking that is what we taught, and if we don't have our health, we have nothing. I mean, we can have a degree from MIT and amazing credentials, but if we're not healthy, what do we have? So, I'm preaching to the choir here.
Well, I mean, a couple things, though. I mean, you raised some really good points. One thing that's exciting is that within the work that I do, and in fact, the organization that I work for, which is called the Healthy Foods, Healthy Lives Institute in the university, actually, there's a whole statewide thing called the Minnesota Food Charter, and it's a list of policy recommendations, things that the various organizations that put it together think need to happen to maintain health and a healthy food system. And there's a whole section on food skills. And one of the things that I think a goal is to bring back food skills as a requirement in schools. Because I am 100% with you on that. It's something that every kid really is as important as knowing math or reading, right? When you graduate from high school. I mean, if you don't know how to feed yourself, that's a big thing. So there are people within this movement that's been working on the local agriculture and food systems for a while that are really working on that, which is exciting. And I think it needs some revamping too, because I do work with some FACS teachers. In fact, I teach, the cooking class that I teach is in the lab where they used to teach home ec at the U, which is kind of fun. So there's like a cabinet that has 200 little cast iron skillets in it, which is my favorite cabinet. Nobody in food science or nutrition uses it, but it's like the best cabinet we have. I use it whenever I can. I pull it out and get the students to do something, but they're little. So I think even those that are teaching it now are missing some important things, and some of that just comes from the last 50 years of the USDA nutrition platform and the things that are lacking or confusing about that. So I think both of those things needs to happen. But I think you're right. I think that food skills and having that be as important as the other things that kids learn is really important.
Well, the government has so much control over what goes on. I mean, I remember attending back in the 70s a nutrition conference, and I was disillusioned because Campbell's Soup had put it on. And I was expecting to be with the gurus of nutrition. And here it was, they were talking about sugar, and it's okay to have this, and it's okay to have this much salt. And even back then, I knew this. It's like, I thought,
It's a
wow,
big marketing
what is wrong with this?
Sadly, the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, who are the people that credential all the dietitians and nutritionists in our country, their two biggest financial supporters are Coca-Cola and McDonald's. So we have a little work to do in terms of, separating out our political interests from what we actually teach people about health and nutrition. And I don't know if anyone has ever gone to the USDA website to try and find anything out about nutrition, but I think it's, and I realize I'm being taped right now, but I think it's one of the most confusing, frustrating websites to try and navigate that I've ever been on. So if someone who's educated around food and nutrition has a hard time navigating it, I can only imagine what most people are experiencing. So my guess is they just don't. So we have to come up with a better way to get good information out to people too. And in my mind, that starts with cooking together, because sitting in front of a computer isn't really going to help me understand what I need to put in my mouth and how I'm going to do it. So, yeah, I think facts and health teachers have a huge role. So, yeah. Any other questions? Yeah.
Have you heard anything about GMO foods? A lot of us here shop at the co-op because we don't want to eat any foods that are genetically engineered.
My stance on GMO foods is that I don't see a problem with wanting to know what's in our food. So the resistance to that is baffling to me. I have to be really careful because I work for the university and because I work in the world of food science and nutrition to say I feel like the evidence is really confusing and mixed about it, and in some respects we just haven't had enough time to actually know the impact. But I personally don't want to eat or feed my kids or my family anything that has been modified in any way. So for me, it's a pretty straightforward equation. Genetically modified food is one version of modified food. Packaged foods and processed foods are another version. But so I think it's a very legitimate concern, and I think making those choices is really, really, I appreciate consumers who are thinking about what's in their food and making those choices. I think that's really important to be informed. And if you don't feel like you have enough information, then there's no good reason to buy a food if you don't feel like you have enough information about it or know, what's in it or how it's going to affect you. So, yeah. Any other questions?
I'm curious to know how many of you have a garden or have a source of produce.
Oh.
To get some new ideas to cook with. So most people, that's great.
So what do people enjoy cooking the most, and what is most baffling to work with?
You're laughing.
Oh. I only started cooking because I had to. I had developed an autoimmune disease, and so I am forced to cook for myself. I have always hated it.
Oh, okay.
And
I love doing
I found I was amazed at how easy soup was, like soup in a crock pot. But I'm still, it tastes good right when I make it, but it's not as, I don't know, I'm missing spices or something to make it really taste good. It's like, okay, I know this tastes nutritious, but it's not really delicious.
Okay.
And I want delicious.
I hear you. What do you guys think about this?
Probably need some salt.
Delicious. Really?
Oh yes, this soup was delicious.
Yeah. Wow.
And it doesn't
That's
need
easy
salt.
peasy.
But
It
sometimes,
doesn't.
some foods do need a little salt to make them taste
Absolutely,
delicious.
and I will say that if you are cooking food from scratch, adding salt is not an issue. We have a salt problem in this country because we have a processed food issue. And when you're eating any food that's been processed or packaged, you have no real idea of how much salt is in it. But if you're cooking with vegetables, there's no added salt in vegetables, right? The only salt that you're going to be adding is the salt that you add. And so you can add as much salt as you think it needs to make it taste the way you want it to taste. Yeah.
I think working with fresh herbs and spices too. I mean,
Yeah.
they just open up so much. And
That's
when
true.
you have like fresh rosemary versus the stuff you buy in the jar, there's just no comparison. So
Right.
you can have
That's a really
herb
good
garden
point.
in your whole-
That's a really good point. And not to say that the only answer is salt.
Oh,
Salt is the sort
absolutely.
of brings out the flavors of all those other wonderful ingredients. But yeah, herbs are in particular relatively easy to grow, you know, so that's a really fun, easy way to sort of add a whole layer of flavor to things. Soups or salads, or, you know, I will grab fresh basil or fresh thyme and just throw it into anything cold that I'm making because it just adds this whole other level. So there's lots of little tricks like that. But this soup, I mean, this is a really great thing to start with because it's super, super easy. And a lot of it, I'll just say, has to do with the sautéing things at the beginning. Because if you make a pot of soup and and I love crock pots, but if you just put everything in the pot, you're going to sort of have one kind of layer of flavor. But if you saute a few things and throw some herbs in and then add a few more things, and, you know, like I threw the onions and the carrots and the potatoes in with the tomatoes, and I let those kind of stew for a while before I added the stock and some of the other vegetables and some garlic and some herbs. So you know, it's a layering process kind of, but that will make a huge difference. And then some of it is just getting the right textures and proteins and combinations of things together. You know, like in my mind, beans are just such a great addition to soups. And then the different possibilities that there are with beans are just endless. And so then you start to get into all the different subtle different flavors that you can create just by changing one thing like that.
I always wondered, does it matter when you add herbs, like say the soup or whatever you're cooking, should be at the end or at the start? Or
Well, again, it kind of depends. So you can do different things with herbs, and herbs are so fresh. First of all, one thing you really need to do is you need to cut them, because that releases the oils. So if you don't cut your herbs, if you just throw them in whole, they will infuse a certain flavor, but it won't be nearly as intense. So so that's one thing. I like to, when I'm doing soup, I like to saute some of the herbs at the beginning, because I think, you know, you get it really infused with the oils, and then it's just it's there. And then I also like to add some later. So I will do both, because they do kind of behave differently depending on whether you put them in oil or whether you put them in liquid, whether they're really toasted or not. And then there's some place for dry and fresh in things too. So sometimes if I'm making some like really thick chili or something, I might want ground dried herbs because they're more intense. And if you're making something that's really heavy and really hearty, you need intensity to, you know, to really taste it. So sometimes herbs are a little bit light for certain flavors or certain dishes. When you're baking with them or roasting with them, you know, that's a different way of infusing them, because the intense heat will, just like it does with the vegetables, will do a little bit of almost caramelizing, and then you get a different kind of flavor. So herbs and spices can have really different properties depending on how you treat them. Yeah. Any other? Should we? One more question? Or
Do you
are
have an especially good cookbook that you recommend?
Well, shameless self-promotion. This is my cookbook, and I brought a few copies if people are interested. And maybe all the recipes that we're doing might be in here. I think they are. So, and what is fun about this, and I will talk about other ones too, but it's arranged by season, so it really does focus on, some really good recipes for fall, really good recipes for summer. It doesn't mean you can't make them at other times of year, but it, focuses on specific ingredients and flavors that really make sense at those times of year. And it's, again, all whole food recipes. So if you're just sort of experimenting or learning, this is a really fun, there's a lot of salads, there's a lot of different whole grain dishes. There's a very small amount of meat. It's not a vegetarian cookbook, but it's almost all vegetarian just because that is the way that I like to cook. But I'm not somebody who says a person should or shouldn't eat meat. I think meat should be a little bit over here on the plate instead of in the middle. So that is one thing I talk a lot about with my students, is that there's nothing wrong with having meat in your diet. Animal protein's a really great source of protein, especially if it's coming from a place that treats those animals well and raises them without certain chemicals or antibiotics. But we don't need that much. And in terms of both budgeting and our health, it makes a lot of sense to have it be more like a side dish and really emphasize the vegetables and the grains as your main event. Besides that, so it depends a little bit. I'm one of these people who likes cookbooks more for the reading than the recipes. Because I will say, and I say this about my recipes too, they should really just be a guide. They should not be something that you feel you have to follow exactly or it won't work. And also, if you look at a recipe and it sounds really good and then you realize, oh, I don't have that one ingredient, it doesn't mean you can't make the recipe. So a lot of what I do when I teach and what I'm interested in is helping people think about what are these different things doing in the recipe? What is it, a texture thing? Is it acidic? Is it sweet? Is it crunchy? Is it, thickening? What is it doing in that recipe? And then maybe the recipe calls for millet, but you only have brown rice. You can still make the recipe. Or maybe it calls for carrots, but you only have sweet potatoes. Or even not even things that close, but thinking about really, what its function is more than that specific ingredient or nothing. And I think that really helps just sort of open up the way that you can use recipes or just create dishes. So other recipes, Deborah Madison is somebody I love, and she wrote Vegetarian Cooking for Everyone, probably 25 years ago. She has an amazing restaurant in San Francisco called Greens. She also has a cookbook called Greens. And she just wrote a book that is called Vegetable Literacy, which is more of what she does is she looks at the different vegetable families and she creates recipes based on things that are in the same family, more than, something like dill and I think asparagus are in the same family. And so it makes sense that those would go together. It's a really beautiful book. What other? Mark Bittman is the book that we use with my students, and we use it mainly because it's basic and it covers it's How to Cook Everything is the name of that book. I do not love him, and I don't love his recipes, but it's very comprehensive and you can learn a lot about everything. So it's a really good, just sort of like basic, it's like a textbook almost. And my kids, if they want to make something, they'll go to that book because it's straightforward and they can follow it and make something. If they want to make pancakes or if they want to make eggs a certain way, they can find it. What else? I have like 50 cookbooks on my shelf. I can't even think of any of them. Madhur Jaffrey is another, she's a Indian woman, but she has recipes from all over the world, which are lovely and mostly vegetable focused. I like a lot of the Moosewood series. Odo Lengi is the new trendy one. He's a man from Israel, and he's got 2 or 3 cookbooks that really are Mediterranean, beautiful Mediterranean recipes. So that's a really fun one.
How do you spell that?
Otlenghi, I think. He's got one called, I think it's called Jerusalem, and then he has another one out. I can't remember what it's called. His recipes are very beautiful, and lots of fruits and vegetables and rice and.
How time consuming?
Well, see, I don't actually follow the recipes, so I don't know. I am not a fan of recipes that require a lot of time, so they probably aren't that complicated, because otherwise I wouldn't really like them. So I get it. I try and stick with about 20 to 30 minutes for any meal, because who has that much time, and who needs to spend that much time? I mean, I can spend all day cooking and I can enjoy that, but that's not something anybody can do every day. So, well, we'll work fast today. And I was amazed because I brought so many recipes to Grand Portage last night, and we had, 8 or 9 people cooking, and we were done so fast. So, many hands, as they say. So hopefully you guys will, and you don't have to, but I would love to invite you to come into the kitchen. I'll tell you what we're going to prepare, and you can kind of think about where you want to step in. So I did this soup already. You'll have that recipe. I did it, I don't know, you were here, Patrick, do you remember how long it took? We were chatting while I did it, but maybe 20 minutes.
20 minutes.
Yeah, and
Good help?
he was talking to me. We can talk a little bit about knife skills, because I do think actually proper cutting technique can help with efficiency in the kitchen, and I think knowing how to use a knife well will, it's good for you, it's good for your knife. So we can go over that. We're going to do a couple different pestos, and one thing that I call a pate, which is really like another kind of pesto. So everyone's probably familiar with the basil pesto, pretty traditional, but we still can do it. We'll use walnuts. I do that mainly because pine nuts are very expensive, and I don't really think you can tell the difference. I think what you want is a delicious oily nut, and that's what you get with walnuts. We know walnuts have omega-3s, which are really, really good fats. Oh, that's yet another thing I will say. I like fat. Fat is our friend. So when I teach about cooking and healthy cooking, I do not talk about anything fat-free, because that does not make any sense. Fat is what gives flavor to things. It's something that we need to absorb a lot of nutrients, and it's a natural component in foods. So as long as we're eating fats that come naturally in foods, enjoy. If we start looking at fats that have been processed and produced and put into our foods, that's a different kind of fat. So we have to distinguish. And I think it's really confusing because we've gotten a nutritional message for so long that just says fat's bad. And it's not. It's super, super good. But there are some fats that are really not good for us. And so we just have to remember fat that comes in food is good fat. So we're talking about things like olive oil, right, made out of olives, coconut oil, which had a bad reputation for a really long time. We're now revisiting that and realizing, oh, actually, it's really good for us. Fats like avocados, so fatty fruits and vegetables, which there aren't a lot of, but avocado oil is a great fat. Even dairy fat, again, don't make it the center of your plate, but absolutely enjoy really good dairy products. I only buy whole milk yogurt. I only buy whole milk, especially for my kids, because their brains are still developing, I hope. I don't know, they're getting older, but they need that fat. That's what it's doing. Oily fish. There's lots of really, even, chicken and meat, there's good sources of fat. So as long as it's a fat that nature has made, in appropriate amounts, it's absolutely great. And it does make things taste good. Where when we take the fat out of food, which should be a red flag in and of itself. If it's a food that normally has fat and it's a fat-free food, just don't eat it. But when you see fat-free, the way that we compensate for taking that flavor out of foods, we put sugar in it. So if you see something that's fat-free, it's probably really high in sugar. And that's, if you are buying something that has a label, take a look at that label and make sure you look at, now they've got 2 categories. They've got added sugar and then they've got carbohydrates, I think is the new label now. Carbohydrates are sugar, just so you know. Especially simple ones like white flour and white rice and white pasta. That's essentially just sugar in our bodies. So as much as possible, whole foods, whole grains, but especially not added sugars.
What about white potatoes?
I love potatoes. And they have vitamins. They have vitamin C in them. I mean, they're not devoid of nutrients. My sort of thing is if I'm eating potatoes, I'm not also eating another grain or a starch, because that's a lot. But I don't say this is a good thing that they have to cut out all these foods because there's things in there they're not supposed to eat on these diets. They end up cutting out mostly processed foods, so they're eating real foods, so they start to feel better and maybe lose weight. So that's a great thing, but I don't believe that it's the diet as much as it is the difference between the processed food and the real food. So I guess I'm not a person who believes in extremes. And I think most of these diets, some of these trends are extremes. I also think there's one main guy who created this diet, and he's really succeeding. He's making a lot of money. And again, it's mostly a great thing, but it's not the way our ancestors ate. Let's be clear. It's not really. There's a really great TED Talk by a woman who is a researcher, an anthropological researcher who looks at the teeth of our ancestors and who says there's pieces of grains in their teeth. Like they ate grains, they ate what, here's all the different things they ate. So, he's gotten a lot of mileage about talking about how our ancestors ate, and I think it's a little dishonest, or it's just maybe not well researched. But if you're gonna choose a bunch of vegetables and less sugar and less other, because you can't really eat sugar, you eat very little fruit on a paleo diet, I think that's fine. So, anytime you're going more towards real whole food and away from other things, that's a good thing in my mind. Yeah.
My husband's on a low potassium diet, so we eat mostly food that I would never have thought of putting on the table before.
Like what?
Canned carrots. He can't have fresh carrots. He can have canned carrots.
That is a really hard one. I've heard this one before.
No dried beans, no soups, just anything that I like we can't have. No potatoes, no potatoes, no sweet potatoes.
And is that because of the potassium in the soil?
I have no idea, but they're all high potassium things
That is,
When you put it on yours.
on my side.
Yeah. I bet.
Do you suggest an online resource that you could look at that would be,
Well, ironically, I would probably suggest it starting with the USDA. There are a couple, there's the Cleveland Clinic, and that might be a good resource because they're really food-based in the way that they treat their patients, but they're an actual, medical facility. I don't know if they get that specific on their website, but you might be able to make your way to something. Yeah.
And there are no cookbooks. that are
Really?
potassium. No.
Okay. Is it, and what is the issue? Why can he not have potassium?
Kidney disease.
Oh, interesting.
If it were kidney failure, I could find cookbooks, but apparently that diet is not the same as what he's on.
Okay. Very interesting. All right, I'll see if I can dig some things up.
What do you think about milk substitutes like almond milk?
Well, I don't like to think of them as substitutes because they are sort of their own beverage.
Yeah.
I think if you enjoy the taste, I don't think there's anything wrong with them at all. I would, if you are thinking about calcium.
I'm thinking about lactose and calcium.
Oh, yeah, I think it's great. I love rice milk.
And rice milk and almond and
Lactose-free.
lactose stuff.
I would buy the enriched versions just so at least you're getting some calcium in them.
The only thing I don't like is I don't like the soy milk. Because
Yeah.
I think my boobs get big.
I don't really like the taste of soy milk that much either. It's kind of chalky and it does work more like milk. So if you're trying to like thicken a soup or something, soy milk's an easier alternative just because it's, rice milk and almond milk just don't have that thickness.
Yeah.
But for drinking and cereal and stuff, I like rice milk the best. So if you are doing it because you can't have lactose and you enjoy the taste, then I think it's fine. Again, you want to want to make sure you look at added sugars and things like that.
Well, vanilla is a natural thing, isn't it?
Both are sweet.
What is?
Vanilla.
Of course, he likes
Sure.
the sweetened ones.
Of course. And they can be kind of bitter, especially the nut milks. So there are some, I'm sure more expensive, but there's some local companies that are starting to produce like natural nut milks. You could look for those, but they will probably be pricier too. So, and the other thing I would say, with stuff like that, I just always recommend buying organic because some of those things, some of the ingredients are particularly heavily sprayed crops in this country or in other countries. Soy for sure, but we know there's some issues with rice too and nuts. So, should we cook?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll finish telling you. So pesto, we have our traditional basil walnut pesto. We have another pesto that's made with cilantro and almonds, which I just happen to think is delicious, but also I just like to make sure people recognize that you can take that general format and then plug things in and play around with different ingredients. So it's the exact same formula, it's just a different herb and a different nut. And you can do that with anything. And you can also use seeds. So for people who can't have nuts but can have seeds, sunflower seeds are a great alternative for pesto. I didn't bring those today, but again, that's an option. You can also throw other greens. So we were talking about kale. Was it you who wanted to know about kale? You can make pesto or a chimichurri sauce if you can't use nuts with kale. And you can, combine basil or parsley and your kale and have a really delicious pesto, and no one will even realize they're eating kale if you're trying to hide it.
And chard too, I guess. You can use chard.
Chard you can too. Yeah, any greens. We've got some kale and some chard over here that we can play around with. I actually didn't bring a recipe specifically for those, so we can talk about some different ways to prepare them and we can throw them into different recipes. The third pesto, which I call a pâté, is a carrot cashew. And this is one of my absolute favorite recipes to make for all kinds of reasons, because it's carrots, so it's sweet and yummy and orange. So it's very beautiful. It's very popular with the young people because they love carrots and it's sweet like carrots. And if you have really delicious fresh carrots, they're very sweet. Cashews are kind of creamy and also sweet, so it's, you know, it's got this wonderful, wonderful color and flavor. And it's basically, again, the same thing. It's just cooked carrots, cashews, some garlic and olive oil and salt. So we're going to do those 3. You look pretty excited about that one. Should we get you on that recipe?
She likes sugar.
Oh,
Sugar olive.
yeah.
So you said sweet.
Sweet. You know what? Vegetables have sugar in them. They do. So what we have to do is figure out how to make that sugar the most tasteable it can be. So roasting vegetables is another way to do that, because all that sugar in there caramelizes, and it kind of comes to the surface, and you get this wonderful sort of caramely texture around the outside of your vegetables, and that's just the natural sugars in that food coming out. My kids, without realizing it, I will put a bowl of roasted cauliflower and carrots and potatoes in front of them, and they eat them like potato chips. They don't even realize that they're doing it. So we'll do the carrot pate. We have a simple salad dressing recipe. I like people to know that in terms of, I do this with my students, in terms of budgeting, there are some really easy places to save money and cut some unnecessary ingredients out of your diet, and salad dressing is like one of the easiest because there's so many things in dressing and it's pretty expensive. You can spend $2 to $5 on an 8-ounce bottle of dressing that you could make for about 35 cents. So it's, you know, it's a good exercise to just say, oh, wow, I can make this and I can put what I want in it, and I can control how sweet or salty or acidic it is, and then I can put it in my fridge and use it for 3 weeks. So we'll do a simple salad dressing, and last night somebody was kind of asking what can you do with pesto? And there's lots and lots of things you can do with pesto, but one thing that I like to do is put a little bit in my salad dressing. So that just changes your dressing, gives you another flavor, another texture because it thickens it up a little bit. Another thing I like to do with pesto is bake proteins with it, like fish or chicken. So a little bit of pesto on there is a really lovely flavoring sauce. I'll take it and just freeze it in my ice cube tray, and then I have little chunks of it that are really easy to thaw. I also saved my carrot tops because they're also very nutritious, and we just usually throw them away, but you can throw those in pesto also. So just an easy way to use another part of the vegetable. What else are we making? That might be it. And we have bread and crackers to sample all of these spreads and pâtés. And then we can make a salad out of the kale that we have and test our salad dressing, or we can cook some of it up and play around with different sauces. All of these spreads that we're making will be delicious on cooked vegetables or raw vegetables. Another thing, and I didn't bring this recipe, but it's in my book, and it's usually what I like to do to, when I have that person, and I have this a lot, say, how can I get my husband to eat kale? I have a recipe that uses miso, which we do have because there's a little bit of it in the carrot pate. Miso is a fermented soybean paste. I mix that with a little bit of maple syrup, so there's your sugar, and mustard and toasted sesame oil. And if you look in my book, you'll see I use these ingredients a lot because I love those flavors. So it's kind of an Asian flavor, and it's a sauce, and it's delicious on greens. So I can point that out to you and tell you about it.
What about blended smoothies that have, you know, like a plain Greek yogurt and throw in kale and blueberries and...
If you like greens in your smoothie, go for it. I personally do not like to eat my greens that way, but I don't see any problem with it at all. I just don't, I've never ever found a place for that, personally. But smoothies are great, and if you enjoy that, that's a really great way to get greens, and if you can get your kids to do it, that's great too. My kids would rather eat cooked greens than drink a green smoothie. And that might just be because that's what I've modeled for so long. And I love smoothies, but honestly, usually smoothies have a lot of fruit in them, and that's a lot of sugar. So if you're going to do that, that's great, but then that's your fruit. You don't need, again, I think the USDA has confused us into thinking we need a lot of fruit in our diet, and fruit's a good thing, but we don't need to worry about getting it because we all get plenty. Vegetables, on the other hand, get as much as you can. So,
See, I put beets and
oh, well then that's more like a juice.
beets and kale and yogurt and ice and maybe a handful of blueberries, and
Wow.
it's just, it goes down real smooth, you know,
Oh, good for you. Then I'd keep doing that. And are you putting the whole beet in?
with the tops.
See, that's good because the other
With
thing.
the tops too?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
It makes like it makes like a reddish purplish.
Yeah, I
It's
bet.
very
Do you
pretty.
cook it first?
No,
No.
You just wash them real good and then?
I'll kind of rinse some. I mean,
Your blood must be really rich.
Wow.
my hemoglobin is 14. Huh?
That's well, so it's working for you, and that's great. I mean, I feel like if you find something and it works, and it's getting a bunch of vegetables into your body,
Well, first
I'm
thing
all
in
for
the
that.
morning, you want something with protein in it,
mm-hmm.
and the doctor said, "Oh, Greek yogurt,
Mm-hmm.
unflavored, would be good."
Good.
And then somebody else said, "But if you can stomach it, do it this." And they suggested
for it.
coconut oil in with the stuff.
Oh wow.
And I found I don't need the coconut oil in there. I like it just the way it is with the Greek yogurt and lots
That's
of
great.
ice.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's almost like a slush.
Yeah, no, it sounds great. I mean, all of those things. The things that are important are that you've got the whole vegetable in there, not just the juice from it. That's really good.
Oh, no, I'm too lazy. I throw the whole thing.
Right.
in.
Well, that's better because the juicing, then you're missing all of that good fiber, and that you're enjoying it. So yeah.
You can even get an ice cream headache from it.
So when you peel a carrot, how much of the nutrition are you taking off?
I don't peel carrots.
You don't do carrots.
No, because I clean them,
Yeah.
but you do lose a little bit of the nutrients and some of the fiber. And I think if they're old, and a little bit rubbery, sometimes they've gotten a little rancid, then you can peel them. But I am a fan of keeping the peels on almost everything, if you can.
But with the carrots, sometimes they just don't taste that good, because I think,
Yeah.
we don't know where they come from or how long ago they were picked, and
So what I would do is go to your farmer's market over the next month or so, or go to your local CSA and get a whole bunch of carrots and put them in your root cellar. And then you know where they came from. Or blanch them and freeze them, and then you'll have them. They won't be fresh, but yeah, I mean, if they don't, if peeling them you think they taste better, then I think that's fine. It's not terrible. It's not like you're not getting any nutrients out of them. I just think most vegetables, the peel is a nutritional part of it. So, yeah.
I can't take credit for this. My girlfriend, I lived in Alaska for 30 years.
Oh, wow.
And when I came back, I stayed with my girlfriend from high school for a few weeks, and her husband would juice for us every morning. And they bought their carrots from the Whole Foods Co-op and in bags like this big.
oh my word.
And he would make, because I'd prepared the carrots the night before, but just wash them. And it was carrots, beets, not a lot of beets, and one apple and ginger. And it was dynamite.
Oh,
I mean,
good.
to start the day with, I just loved it. So,
Yeah.
Did you peel the ginger?
yes.
But if
Grated
you're
it,
using
actually.
the juicer is going to separate all that pulp
Yeah.
out anyway,
Yeah.
and so
Oh, so you don't,
you
Oh,
don't.
that was
So you
huge.
miss
But
out.
I think we did.
Yeah.
I think we did. It's been a few years, but I always.
I think all that is good. One of the things that is happening just culturally is that people are not recognizing that by drinking a lot of their nutrients, they're adding more food into their diet than they need. So it's, for a lot of people, for some people this isn't true, but for a lot of people, the beverage is in addition to everything that they're eating. They're not cutting anything out, and it adds a lot more than you need sometimes. So I'm a really big fan of water as a beverage, and certainly the occasional wine and beer is lovely, and there's nothing wrong with a good fermented beverage. But I think a lot of these trends come from people trying to get their nutrients without having to actually eat them. And the truth is, the best way to get them is to eat them. So we might as well find ways to make it really delicious and enjoyable, I guess, would be my comment on that. All right. Does anybody need anything before we start? Come on in.
I'll just let everybody know too that the bathrooms are just right down the hall here on the left if you need one.
I thought this soup was yummy.
Should we keep our bowls and our spoons and our...
Yeah, why don't we just keep
Sure. Yeah, because there's more soup. Although not much. I want to taste that bread before you go. You go ahead and look around, and I'm going to grab a piece of this bread, and then I'll...
So if you're live streaming, thanks for joining us. We are taking questions this is the Supper in the Garden with Jenny Breen here in the Congregational Church in Grand Marais. For anybody watching at home, we're happy to take your questions to incorporate in the conversation. In order to participate in the live chat, you must have a Google account. If you've already got a Gmail account, you can use that. Once you've logged into your account, click the YouTube logo in the lower right-hand corner of this video. That will open the tools for interaction. Now on the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see a chat window. Depending on the size of the screen, you may need to scroll down a little bit. This chat window is where you can send your message, and we are monitoring them and will respond as quickly as we can. If you need more clarification, you can call 218-370-8085. We're going to cook now, so feel free to join us, and we'll also share the recipes as we go as well.
Yeah, so if you do your own, I think that it's fine. You can get really into the weeds with this stuff, right? Because there's you seem like you guys cook there's the roasting it at a very low temperature for 2 days at 120 degrees or something, so it never gets up that high, which then maintains more of the nutrient. You don't lose some of the phytonutrients. You like them raw? I like them raw too, but I like them toasted too. So I think toasting them yourself and enjoying them is great. Are we ready?
We're ready.
Okay, so I already cooked the carrots for our pate. So I just roughly chopped them and boiled them. And then what we'll do is we'll use the carrots, and we need a little bit of liquid to kind of get it creamy. So we'll just use liquid from the cooked carrots. So that way sometimes when you boil vegetables, a lot of the nutrients end up in the water. So I don't like to boil them as a cooking method because I lose a lot of the nutrients. But if you do end up doing that for certain recipes, you can save that liquid and then use it for the recipe or for something else like soup, right? Because then you're recycling what's in that water. And buying soup stock is expensive, and we can use our scraps to make soup stock all the time. So the carrot pate has cashews. All of these recipes have garlic, so we'll have to peel some garlic. It has a little bit of celery seed. That's the difference between this and the pestos. The pestos don't have any added spices. And then it has miso, which I mentioned a moment ago, which is made from soybeans, and it's a fermented soybean paste. That's another thing I wanted to ask about with the potassium. If it's fermented, does it matter?
I don't know.
Okay, I would be curious to know about that. Fermented soybean paste. So it's something that looks, oh, it's one of these. Something that looks a little weird when you look at it. But it's a really interesting and sort of delicious flavor. So you've all, that's what it looks like. Like you could spread it on your bread, and I actually have done that. It's a little bit salty. It's got a little bit of fermented flavor. That might be a little strong for people, but it's just a tiny bit in here. It's very subtle. If you didn't have it, you wouldn't know it. It wouldn't be missing, but when you have it, it just adds something. So it'll be interesting to see what you think. This is something that will last forever in your refrigerator. It's fermented and it just never ever goes bad. So you can experiment and play with it. It's traditionally used for soup broth, a traditional Japanese soup broth that's eaten like daily in Japan. It's got live cultures in it, so it's very good for your digestion, kind of like the acidophilus in yogurt. But you can't boil it or you'll kill those cultures. I mean, you can still taste it. So when you make miso soup, you have to cook the vegetables and then you take a little water out and mix the miso in, just so you don't kill the cultures. I use it a lot for sauces, and I will put that in my dressing sometimes too. So it just adds that very hard to identify, but really nice. It's known as the umami flavor. So are people aware of the new umami category of flavors? So we know that, do we know the traditional flavors? Can you name them? Sweet, I know you know that one. Salty. They all. And one more, lemons. What are lemons? Sour. Right. And then there's one more. And those all kind of correspond to certain parts of our tongue, right? So sweet, where do we taste sweet? Right on the very front. That's why we love sweet so much, because it just hits you immediately. Sour, when we eat a lemon, right back here. Bitter, I think, is kind of a little in the middle of the tongue. And salty, I think, is like right in the middle, like in the middle of the back. Umami, I'm not really sure where it hits you, but umami is like earthy and savory. So it's officially another flavor now. The best examples that are given of umami flavors are Parmesan cheese and mushrooms. So it's that very savory, sort of really grounding flavor. So miso is technically also an umami flavor. So I think fermented foods might fall into that category. I don't know, but things maybe like some breads, sourdough, I don't know.
As you're teaching, would you show how to use that?
The food processor?
Yeah, because I don't have one. In this area.
Sure, and I also brought my immersion blender.
I have one of those.
Okay, so you can use that for any of the recipes that we're using a food processor for. You can, absolutely. But a food processor is a really great tool if you have one, and of course they're all different. So I'm gonna guess. Now this is a little concerning to me. Maybe that goes. Do we know for sure that this is necessary? Do you know about this tool here?
We're pulling the food processor owner in.
Oh, okay. Will you just show me where this goes?
That is if we're using.
Oh, okay. That I know.
So.
Okay. So we don't need that.
No.
So all of these are really easy to do in a food processor. Traditionally, of course, they were done by hand with a mortar and pestle. So you can do that, but it's a little more work. Tess up at Grand Portage had these hand processors that you could, pull a string. So it's really great for kids because you don't plug them in. But they're a workout. You could totally do it instead of weightlifting. But, you know, if you have kids who are helping, it's kind of a nice alternative because they don't have to deal with the blade. And they did, and they do enjoy it, although she says there's a lot of accidents because they let go and they kind of fly around. But so we'll do that. And the most important thing when you're using a food processor for something like this is just the order, because if I put the liquidy stuff in first and then I try and grind the nuts up really small, it won't work. So you want to make sure and do your nuts or your harder things first and get those really ground, and then add your softer ingredients. Patrick, do you want me to move this over there?
That'd be great.
Do we have a plug?
We actually have 5 people viewing, so.
Oh, yay! Hi, everybody. The only thing I don't know is if there's a plug. Okay, so we can do that. All right.
Wants to carry these things
Sure.
over.
So it'll still be over here a little bit. Oh, look at you.
Is the cutting board here all right for you, or you have another
Oh
spot?
yeah, but I'm not going to be doing this. Someone else is.
Oh, I was just thinking of the TV thing. I didn't know.
While Jenny gets set up too, I'm going to give a plug. All these vegetables that, well, maybe not 100%, but most of them that you see were purchased at the farmer's market yesterday, the Thursday food market. So we can tell you, this is Lynn Abrahamson's pepper. This is Ian Andrus's cucumber from Lutsid. These are Nick Wharton's beans. So just so everybody knows, there's rumors floating around that if you come to the market, you won't be able to buy any food. And that's not the case. There's lots of produce there. It runs from 4 to 5:30 at the community center parking lot every Thursday. We'll go for sure through September and maybe longer, just
I'll tell
depending.
you, be there at 4 because some people are there earlier, because I was at 4, and a lot of people had bought a lot of food by that time.
Yep, and it varies by week.
Yeah.
So for the last 2 weeks, there has been not very many people there, and there's been
There wasn't a lot
tons of
produce.
produce.
There was?
Yes.
The last
So
2
it's
weeks?
August, and there's produce. But I know it has earlier on in the season, it was a little bit hit or miss.
Yeah.
So
But that's the rhythm of the market.
That's
I mean,
great
you know,
right
there's
now.
there's a time of sort of scarcity and a time of abundance, and when there's abundance, we should take advantage of it.
Yeah.
I remember the other recipe, pickles. So one of the things that happens when there's abundance and we try and stock up is that sometimes we have something that we want to preserve, but we don't quite know how to do it, or we don't want to do the whole canning thing. So this is a quick pickle recipe, and I like to just do it so that people can see how quick it is. And so it's not something that you can set on your shelf without refrigeration. It needs to go in the refrigerator because it hasn't been, canned through a hot water canning process. But it's really delicious, and you can use any vegetable. So we have a zucchini, we have a golden beet, we have these beautiful purple beans, and we'll see if they stay purple. I think they will. We will quickly blanch these. Does everyone know what blanching is? All right. Can someone explain?
You just put them in boiling water really quick to take care of any bacteria that might accumulate on the skin because they come from the ground. Is that right?
That's one of the reasons you do it. Another reason that you blanch is because typically you're then going to do some other treatment. In this case, we're going to preserve them and we're going to pickle them, although we would also blanch them if we were going to freeze them. And what you're actually doing is sealing the nutrients in. So it's you're doing it really quickly, and then you're cooling it really quickly so it doesn't keep cooking. So it maintains this really nice texture even after it's frozen. So when you buy a frozen vegetable, it's usually blanched before it's frozen, which is why it appears to have been cooked, because it has been partially cooked. Something like this is going to take a little longer to blanch than something like this. So the vegetables that have a lot of water in them and are softer are really fast to blanch. The ones that are harder, usually often root vegetables like carrots or gold beets, are going to take a little bit longer. So partly will depend on how thinly or thickly we cut them. So we'll probably want to cut them thin so that we can blanch them like a minute and a half as opposed to 20, 30 seconds for these. And then we will prepare just a really basic pickling liquid, which is vinegar, water, and a little bit of sugar or other sweetener. Sometimes I use maple syrup. And then we'll take whatever fresh herbs or garlic we have, we'll put that all together in our container and then just pour the liquid over it, and that can go into our fridge. So we'll have to sort through and find a couple containers. And you can do it in Tupperware. You can obviously do it in glass. It's really pretty when you do it in a glass jar. Or you can do it in any kind of container where you have a way of sealing it.
Will it keep indefinitely in the refrigerator?
Not indefinitely, but I have quick pickles in my fridge for at least a month. I'd even say a couple months, as long as you keep it refrigerated. You know, I mean, it's preserved. There's vinegar, so it's still preserved, so it's not going to go bad, but it might get mushy or just not taste as good. So that's the other recipe that I forgot to mention, and that will heat that liquid on the stove. It doesn't have to boil for a really long time. We'll just bring it up to a kind of a low simmer and then use that. But we'll have to heat water to blanch. So that's another activity that somebody can do. So I am happy to guide people, but I don't think it makes sense for me to demonstrate every recipe because that will take a really long time. And I think it's more fun to have people cooking. And I'll make my way around. So we have one food processor, and then I'll pull out my immersion blender. So we at least have two ways of blending things at the same time. So do you want to say what you want to do, or do you want to just go to a spot and I'll get you started? What do you want to work on? You don't know? Okay.
What do you want to work on?
Anything. Oh, come on. Do you want me to assign you?
Sure. You better do that.
Okay, let's see. Well,
I'll do the carrots and the cashew.
all right. Well, so that's been moved over here, so you're going to be right front and center. So I think you have everything except the garlic, and there's lots of garlic around. I just haven't peeled it all. You guys could work on that.
Okay.
It's sticky,
We need to
kind of
use our
sticky. Is that all right?
Yeah.
Have you washed your hands?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes? Okay. So I'm going to have you guys it's really hard. It's like paper thin, but you just have to try and the easiest way I think to do it is just to peel one edge of the paper, and then sometimes it just pulls right off. There is a granola recipe. We're not preparing it, but we'll talk about it. Yet another thing that you can do on your own and have control over what's in it and spend a lot less money than buying it. Granola is expensive. It's not cheap to make, but depending on what you choose for ingredients, it can be. And it's delicious and fresh. So how about the balsamic dressing? Someone want to work on that right here? And I'll get a better, you can mix it right in there. How about? So you should have, balsamic vinaigrette, exactly. And I think we need a little.
Okay, so I want 1 cup of these. 1 cup of balsamic.
Can we do the basil walnut?
You
'Cause
sure
I've got a
can.
lot of-
Here's all the stuff for that right here.
Okay, and then we can do that with the immersion?
We can.
Do we have a container?
I will find a good container for you. Actually, my immersion blender has this attachment.
Oh, mine does.
So you can do that, or we can do it in a different container. The only problem with this is you have to do about a third of a recipe at a time because it's small. Maybe you could do a half a recipe.
There isn't another, okay. So
Uh-oh.
are the measuring, you've got the measuring things over there.
Yeah, I didn't find a lot of measuring things. We can look around for stuff. How about You guys.
It doesn't matter, we can watch.
I have an idea. Well, we need to do a lot of prepping the vegetables for the pickles. So let's, I grab another, you tell me what you need and I'll see if I can find it.
You mean to,
Whatever you need. If you're finding what you need.
2/3
Cup walnuts.
Yeah, and a quarter of a cup of olive oil. And
So you've got your walnuts here and your basil here and your garlic.
is
and
this the
olive.
amount? 2/3 of a cup?
I'm not sure. I would measure it. But I think you could, I think it's close enough that you could eyeball it. So, okay, this is my very sharp knife. Wow, good job, you guys. I'll pull out some other knives for you guys. Oh, you're still working on, sorry, I should have pulled this. I'm going to just pull this out for a moment. See if I can find. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Pretty close.
Okay, let's see how these knives. What are you looking for? Can I help you find something? Is that what you're looking for?
Yeah.
There you are. So these, the way that we want to cut anything for pickles, the carrots are, although if you want to scrub them more, you can. I did rinse them, but I didn't scrub them with the vegetable brush. This hasn't been washed. Woo-hoo! Usually in my house we say loud noise right before we do that, even though my kids are bigger. So something like this, we're going to want to take the peel off.
Loud noise.
And you can do that with your knife. And then I will cut it nice and thin.
Oh, like potato chips?
Almost. Yeah. And here you can do that zucchini. Same thing, you can do slices or you can do little sticks for pickles. No, this is, oh, maybe it's a cucumber. Oh, it is. Oh, okay. So we can do that. So you can do slices or you can do spears. These cucumbers we will not blanch. They're too watery. We don't want to blanch them and then pickle them because they'll get mushy. So just those will go right into our container.
A blanched zucchini?
A little bit. You could not blanch it and it would be okay, especially if you cut it thin. That's all of this is for the pickled vegetables. Wow, you guys are fast. I thought that would take so much longer. Okay, yeah, unless you like the flavor. But wait. I'm going to get more garlic for you. I've got some garlic peelers over here, so if you want help, I can have them do it.
That we can read. Or maybe you could just tell.
Oh, this is 1 cup.
2/3 and 3/4.
Oh yeah, those are such tough measurements. No, let's find you a better one. Oh, here we go. Here's a bunch.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bunch of stuff. Okay, I'm going to give you a few more because garlic is really fun to put in the pickles too. But you know what? We could use that jar. We could use this jar for the pickles. That would be kind of fun. Once we blanch them, we can fill them up. That's another thing you guys can help with. You know what? That's going to be really hard. Let me cut a little first. Because, we have a compost bin? I have just been putting stuff in the garbage because I didn't know.
I'll try to find something.
We can find a bowl if there's a place to bring the compost.
Okay.
Good. These are a couple.
You're going to blanch this pepper before it goes in the...
Yep.
Don't you
like strips?
Well, that one.
Whatever you just think. Sure, yeah, I think that's kind of a nice way to do it. Okay, you guys, that is a lot of garlic. If you can do all that, then you get a rest afterwards.
No, if we don't want to rest.
Ooh, I like hearing that. I will find something for you to do. Yay! Oh, I have another job for you guys. I got a job for you after this. This is a really great trick I want to show everybody. When you have your greens and you want to take the leaves off your greens, you grab it from the bottom. It's gonna happen. Of course, now it's not gonna work. And you go, and you just pull it right off. So when my kids used to come to, I do a lot of cooking demonstrations in the farmers markets. They don't come with me so much anymore, but when they used to, that was their favorite job.
Really?
Oh yeah, it's really cool. So you just do it, and then the stem is removed. You don't have to deal with it. You don't have to use a knife and try and cut around it.
Yeah, that is great.
So that's
Do you use the
easy.
stems for anything?
I do not. They're tough, and they aren't that great for stock either. So I throw them in the compost. But I guess if you were going to make kale soup, you could use them. They're bitter. They're in the, cabbage family is kind of bitter, and I will eat charred stems because they're much more tender. But colored and kale stems, I just don't think they're that good.
Do you want like this?
That's great.
You want them cut in half or just that big?
I think that'll work. Yeah. All right. So did you guys see what I did?
Mm-hmm.
That's your next job, okay?
Okay.
All right. All right. Do you want to help? Do you want to get the cilantro pesto ready? Because we won't. So you tell me if you need help with that blender.
Well, yeah.
If you don't,
I've got this measured.
okay. So I'm actually going to set you up with this one.
So now
So
what
it's
do I
basically
do?
you just push the button,
But
this
is
button
it gonna
up here.
but do I have a container to make this stuff? Is that what this
Well,
is?
that's what this is. You're going to make it right in
You mean
here.
the whole it'll all fit in there?
Well,
We've got garlic.
Loud noise!
chop it up too much.
Loud noise!
And then the garlic, put the garlic together with that.
Some
And then puree it. Yeah. And then you're just adding your basil. So the main thing is you're probably going to have the olive oil. Where does that go? With the basil. But you're probably just going to have to do this in small batches.
And then we
Add some, you'll puree it, and you'll add
Yep.
more.
And you want to pulse the switch to the process until it's smooth and creamy. And then pulses, well, just keep turning on and off.
Immersion blender is?
I have
Reasoner?
one at a cabin and one, no. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So you could look online and see if they make an attachment like this for it. I bet they do. If not, then
Did you say just put this in?
yeah, what you want to
After-
just
get the stems
de-stem
off?
it. So get those stems off. Throw in as here we go.
Loud
About,
noise!
and then we'll put oil and salt in.
How will we know?
Measure it.
I mean, it's still 3 cups.
You could measure it and then we'll
So what
just
would
add it a
you,
little at a
but how
time.
would you measure it?
I would de-stem it first, and then I would put my leaves in.
Okay, let's so here's the,
We need to get a
I
pot
do.
of water ready for blanch. So we could, I'm not sure if there's another pot.
We have a small one. This, not
Oh, the one that the carrots are in? Oh, yeah, okay. That'll work pretty good.
okay.
And you know what you might need to do with these sometimes is to scrape around the
have a
outsides a few
scraper.
times. Oh, good,
Yeah.
okay. Perfect. You guys are.
So this must come off. Oh, this, you just slide, you just turn. Okay, good.
So the challenge with blanching is just getting it out and
The garlic. Can you guys smell the garlic in here?
Yes. A lot.
Oh, it smells so good. Can you smell?
They're right next to it.
Oh!
see if we can
Oh.
find a slide.
In order for it to work, it goes the other way. Yeah, left-handed people. And it's wide. This has to fit into this slot to engage. Okay, I don't have one of these fancy.
My dad said it's okay that I can stay.
See some things that chocolate. Yeah. Kind of something like that. Yeah.
Regardless,
Smells good. No, I don't think so.
and then we can do these.
All this.
No, just go this way.
Here, just a second.
I don't worry so much about those. So if you have a kid who wants to, you can get them. I used to have my kids pull
Here's your
the leaves off.
yes.
Yeah.
Now
You just use
use the stems because they're if you're
this. Must be. This
blending
looks
it
like
up or
a
chopping it, the stems
Yeah.
have flavor.
I think it's done. What do you think?
So if I'm making
Did you try it yet? No, we're just want to be here. Put a little bit on my finger. Did you wash your finger? Yes.
Do you always buy organic?
with most.
Well, it looks like a pet. It looks. Everything's chopped up. Is it good? Pie would no. It's got flavor. Pie would taste better on a cracker. I wonder if she needs her food scissors.
Like this, and put
Oh,
no, it's perfect.
Decide which ones are a little safer to buy conventional.
I ripped it again.
Start a little bit from the beginning. And
Oh yes, I think so. Let's get that into a bowl. Did you taste it?
You need it with her finger. She thinks the cracker would be better.
Oh yeah. I usually like crackers better than fingers. You know, we don't have to use it. A lot of times that doesn't indicate that it's bad. It might just have been like it got a little cold or something, but you can leave it out.
If we have our first cup.
Yeah, and let's put some oil in. Oh, that's not much. I know we have olive oil somewhere.
Oh, so that's
Where is our...
okay. That'll be good.
It's good on a cracker.
Is it good on a cracker? Oh yes, I will do that.
We have olive oil over here.
Okay, good. I want to get this into a bowl. Thank you. And you're... Oh, that looks so good. I love this stuff. It does look beautiful, and it's super tasty too. So if you put it, you know, it's a little bit wet right now.
Yep.
If you can always put less liquid in.
Yep.
And then also if you put it in the refrigerator and let it firm up, it gets a little bit thicker. Yeah. Well, it's something you need to refrigerate it, right? You can't leave it out once you make it.
Right now. Do you want it?
Just in sure, yeah, we can put it in the refrigerator right now.
We didn't have any measuring utensils.
Oh, you just eyeballed it. Nice job. Well, that's just fine.
Who left?
She left?
Yes.
Why did she leave?
I don't know.
Okay, that can go in the fridge. I'll wash this off. Oopsie. I hear I don't know over there. Oh, yep. Yes, I will do that. Did you add?
Should I stir this?
Well, we can take that out and just scrape it down a little, but that's great. It's just that the ratio is there's more nuts than basil, so we can keep adding basil. And if we need to take a little bit out to make more room, that's okay. We can just do it in batches if we have to. Okay. Oh, that's definitely boiling. Ooh, careful. Okay, our blanchers. So this is what we should maybe do is get a few bowls so that we can blanch them and then stick them back into the bowls. So maybe these kind of bowls might work fine. Oopsie. These. should work. It's probably more than you need. All right. So, these, another way to cut these if you're making pickles is to kind of cut like little spears like that. Think about eating them. Like when I eat pickled things, I kind of like to hold them in my fingers. So it's kind of fun to have them be that size where you can hold them in your fingers. But they certainly work this way too. They're just more of a kind of a fork food then.
We're done.
You guys. Okay. Well, what else do I have for you to do? You can help with the blanching. You guys can be the assistants on that part, okay? So the grown-ups are going to be the bosses, and you're going to be the assistants. All right? So here's what we're going to do. We'll start with, I think I did already trim these, didn't I? Okay. We'll start with these. Just careful, because this burner is on, so I want you to be careful there. So with this, because we don't have ice water or ice to put it in, we'll just do this and then run it under cold water, and that should be fine. But there's a spotted spoon. Oh, here we go. Okay. So we wanted to get this rolling again. We'll do this. Now this is going to be relatively quick, so literally like 20 seconds or so. We'll let that go, and then we'll put it in the bowl, then we'll give it to these ladies, and they're going to bring it over there and run it under cold water. So you're going to try and cool it off because it's going to be hot. So we don't want to touch the beans, we just want to touch the bowl. That'll be warm too. Yes.
Hot on the bottom, so maybe
we could get you some hot pads if you think you need them, but I don't think it's going to be that hot. Yeah, and you know what will happen with these is they'll start to lose their green color if we blanch them too much. Aren't they cool? They look like worms a little bit, maybe. Yes, there we go. Now, so those will take a little longer than the beans did, because probably a minute to a minute and a half even.
Oh, okay.
And the cucumbers we don't need to blanch. And I wish the
Peppers won't take much longer than the...
Right, they'll be fast because they have a lot of more water. I would drain them a few times until when you touch it, it doesn't feel too hot. I wonder if, where did you find, excuse me, I'm going to open this. Well, I'd love to find a few more of those jars because I did not.
Canning jars?
Yeah, are there more? Oh, okay. 2 will be plenty. I think 2. There's no lids.
Is that other one still here?
Yeah, I got the other one. So here. So what you got? Awesome. So now.
What are we doing now?
The cucumbers and the beans, and we're also going to put a few other vegetables in. So we probably won't use all these, but you can put some in each jar. All right, that's our dressing. So,
Yep, dressing's done.
this is what I'm thinking we should do is we can make, there's 2 things we can do with this kale. One is we can cut it up and then we do what's called massaging. We massage our kale to kind of, we don't have to massage every little piece like this. What I usually do is just kind of in my hands. Because you're sort of pre-cooking it a little bit. Kale's a little tough to eat raw. So you want to tenderize it or soften it. So we'll do that with some. And then we'll also saute some to cook it a little more. So the first thing we can do, you guys can do this too, is rip it into small pieces. No need to cut it with a knife. You can cut it with a knife, but you can also just use your hands. Yep, we'll get a bowl for those. Oh, thank you. It's getting there.
Do we need quite a bit more basil in there?
You know, it's entirely kind of your call. Do you want to taste it and see what you think? I like my pesto kind of green.
So are you calling this kind of green or not?
That's not quite as green as I would make it.
Put more in.
Yeah.
Okay. I've never made this.
Oh, you haven't? Oh boy, that's good. Wait, you guys, we have a whole nother bag of greens to destem. All right. And these actually, you don't really have to pull the whole thing off because this is charred and the stem is not bad. But we're gonna go like this, okay?
So just pull like the extra.
You can do it. You can do it this way too because that's fun. So whichever you want.
Do you want some of that in the same bowls, or do you want it separate?
So
You can put it in the same bowls. That's fine.
Was some of this not supposed to be chopped up?
No, you can do all of it. We're just going to do two different things. One's going to be more salady, and one's going to be sautéed.
do that.
And if I will show you, and I can send this to you. If you don't go home with the book, I can show you the delicious kale recipe that I like to use.
Yeah, looking through it, there's not very much I could make.
Yeah, that's too bad. It's really, really disappointing.
I've gotten rid of most of my cookbooks, and I just look up things on the
It's just
internet.
frustrating.
Yeah.
Oh, that sounds really hard. 78, I think, is the page. Here it is. You probably can't do that one either, but take a look at it and see.
So then you cool them down?
Yeah, so normally when you blanch, you would put them on ice because that's the fastest way to cool them.
Yeah.
But running them under cold water works just fine.
It's going to be okay, just we haven't added the salt yet.
Oh yeah, we're going to want to add the salt, but we can mix that in at the end. That's
So
fine.
that's fine.
Yep,
Okay.
that's totally fine. And if you need more oil, like if it's getting hard to blend, you can add a little more oil too.
Oh, okay.
So, all right, do we need to blanch anything else? Oh, the beets, and we're good.
Oh, those.
No, I don't think we need to do more, so I don't want to do it if we don't need to. We're going to do two different methods with the greens. Oh, you guys, we need to put some of this in the pickle jars and some of this. You don't need to do anything with those. You can put them in whole.
Okay. So do we need? You don't need. You can just put it in.
I think it's enough.
Do we need the garlic in there?
Yep, put some garlic in. No, those were for the soup, so we already did those. So we could do the cilantro and almond pesto. You guys have the hardest work because you're using the little guy. So you can bring that back over to the stand over here. Oopsie, we need to wash this. And so it's the same as the, well, you can pull the recipe out, but we'll start with the garlic and the almonds.
And put it in here.
Yep, I don't know if it's all of it, so we should find the recipe to measure. All right, ooh, those are so, it looks so pretty when you get it all. Maybe we have other stuff to put in, so there's one more vegetable going in there, so save some room.
I believe this is good.
You believe it is.
I believe it's good for
Which
me.
one is it?
It's that one.
That one, okay.
And it says pecan, but it says pecans or almonds. So 2 cups. And guessing she measured. But so again, you're going to start with the garlic and the almonds and then add the cilantro to it. And I'm just cleaning up. Well, you're going to cut the ends off of that, but the stems you don't have to worry about. You can just put it in whole. And there's now that you're done with the blanching, I'll have you mix up the actual pickle liquid, which is just the vinegar and water and sugar. Okay, so we want to make sure the blade goes. So when you're using a food processor, you want to make sure that each part is on the way it's supposed to go, otherwise they won't actually work.
Yeah, look at
I'll get that pusher.
Keep doing and what is the beans?
Okay, yes.
Finish.
Okay, so we're going to start with some garlic. I don't know how much it said, but I'm guessing about that much. And we want 2 cups of almonds. So,
What? Oh, we are not making the
Blanche.
Pickle juice. No, this is the cilantro
Cilantro,
almond
okay,
pesto.
okay.
Yep. Somebody, I think.
That was her.
Oh, you were doing the. I have you
It's
doing
okay,
two things at once. Come on, aren't you magic? I will just throw this on because it's really simple. So you guys can get started on the pesto.
So where does it go on over?
Yep.
Okay.
Oh, that's so funny.
You were doing the.
I mixed you up.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
You're doing the pickling water.
Okay.
So I just emptied this out. I didn't really clean it because I'm not going to worry too much.
All right.
And just whoever's doing the pesto, I put the garlic in there already. Yeah, that's fine. The only thing I would do is
because
I don't know if the cilantro was washed, but this is not dirt. This is if you
The way it grew.
Yeah, it's just got some marks on it.
Right.
But if it feels gritty, we could soak it in water and rinse it.
wash.
Okay, I think we should do that. So the vinegar that you need is here, and the sugar is here, and then it's just water. Those are just those three items.
Okay. Oh, and it's just distilled white vinegar.
Yep. You can use cider vinegar too. You don't really want to use anything more fancy than that because you want something. When they come up with pickling recipes, they know exactly how much acid there is in a certain kind of vinegar, so it's very specific.
Okay.
So, medicines, I'm so glad to hear that you don't think it smells like medicine.
So how can I drain this without a colander?
Oh, I think I saw a colander. I did. Excuse me, I think, here we go.
Does this just need more oil?
Here you go. So so if it feels kind of chunky and thick.
It needs, well, we can't get it mixed very well.
Oh, really? It might just be kind of maxed out, but yes, a little more oil will definitely give it a different texture. And then let's add the salt too. Here's salt. If you're done, we could start collecting dirty dishes to. Is that what it says? 2 pinches? That's about right usually. 2 pinches.
A teaspoon. Yeah.
Okay.
That's closer to the.
Yeah, I'd say so.
All right, show me how to use this machine over here. Here's the.
Okay, so first we're going to put the almonds in.
Okay.
And we want 2 cups, which I think that's close, but let's measure. Okay, you know what we can do? Let's combine the leftovers. You want to eat some?
It had water in it, but it should be all right. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Those would be really good dipped in our dips once the dips are done. Yep, throw them in there with so we're going to be doing that with the garlic.
Oh, it's a little more. So.
Yeah, so it's good to measure.
Okay. I don't even know how to work on it.
Okay, so usually there's going to be a spot that it's going to hook into,
Where it snaps.
right? Sorry, loud noise. And raw nuts are really tough.
Yeah, that's why.
So it's really, really working. Okay.
I measure a 1/3 cup of olive oil for it.
Yep.
So then supposed to put our finished product into a dish?
That would be good. So there, yep, grab a bowl. Yep, I think it is. Oh, we do? Okay. You do not have to be the only dish person. Yep, you can pour that in, and then we want to make sure and get salt. And does your recipe say salt?
No, but it does say spice seeds.
So, yeah, we don't have those today,
Okay.
so we're not going to use them.
Okay.
But those would go into the jar anyway.
Oh,
The
and
only thing you
it
want
says-
in the saucepan is the vinegar, the water, and the sugar.
All right, so
And that's-
remaining
that's-
ingredients, so I started putting.
Oh, okay, we put garlic into the pickles, but,
Okay.
okay, it's okay.
All right, 3 teaspoons.
I'm just going to eyeball it. You can always add more if we think we need it. So we might decide that it needs a little more oil. So the thing about a food processor is you kind of have to go and scrape and go and scrape. There are some rubber spatulas around here. I think I saw one here. That looks, yeah, that's really good for that little tiny machine. So I'm going to say because these almonds are raw, they're a little drier. When you roast nuts, you get the oil. So a little more oil in this case.
Good.
Okay. My goodness. Is that loud in your earphones? Still looks kind of dry, doesn't it? I think it's the almonds. So we're using raw almonds, which makes a big difference in terms of the oiliness. Typically with something like pesto, I would probably toast the almonds or the nuts because it brings the oils out and it just makes them break down and sort of cream up.
On the top of the stove or in the oven?
Either way works. Whatever you prefer. Walnuts are really oily raw, so you don't have to do that with them. Almonds are much drier raw, so it helps to
Walnuts
toast them.
work just as well as almonds?
They would, it's just a flavor preference, absolutely. And actually my favorite with cilantro is pecans, which are also very oily. They're expensive. So this is a pulsing button, and for stuff like this, pulsing is really nice to do because it kind of just works it a little more. Sometimes it helps get the stuff from the outside mixed in. All right, I don't know if you guys can do this. Do you think you can get this into a bowl? Okay, remember there's a sharp blade in there. All right,
Are we using this bowl?
you can. You might need 2 bowls actually.
Well, this one has beet juice in it.
Oh, well, that's not the worst thing in the world.
Refrigerator or just
No, I think we can start putting everything out because we're pretty ready to sample.
on the table or what?
Let's put it on the table just because this is still a workspace. Do you want to saute these real quick?
Can.
Okay. We'll just do a quick saute of these. I like to use a tongs when I saute greens. Makes it easier to, although this one's a little bit funny, but I'll find a frying pan. And we'll just saute it in a little bit of olive oil. I'm going to move stuff away here.
Oh, yeah, I've got a dish towel.
I don't know where the lid for this one is. And also we'll put a little salt on there.
Is this yours?
That is mine, yes. That is a lot of pesto, isn't it?
I think we're gonna need another bowl.
You do. Whoopsie, whoopsie, whoopsie.
Go here, I think.
I think you're right. Oh, you could just pot a chaotic kitchen. I know. Welcome to my life. It'd be a good reality show, though, huh? The chaotic kitchen. Maybe not. Okay, that's probably good, and then this will go fast. So, whoopsie, it's all going to shrink too. So even though it looks like I'm putting a ton in here, so what I would do is just kind of turn it, and if that tong, it's not the nicest tong, so if it's a pain, I'll get you something else. And
This thing is on.
did I turn the wrong one on?
No,
It's definitely on.
Is it on?
Oh yeah,
Okay,
it's hot. This is
okay.
almost boiling, so
Okay.
actually I think it's fine.
Oh,
I think
all
we can
right.
take it out. All right, ladies. I'm going to pour this in here now.
What is that?
That is the pickling juice. Oh, we only have one. Well, someone will have to go home.
The sauteing, what are we making?
We're just sauteing some greens so we can compare the raw. You know what? Did we do some
We probably
massaging?
need another bowl. We might
Okay.
need another bowl.
I'm going to throw a little bit more into hers because I like them better cooked. I'm going to throw some more in there for you. Oh, I'll do a little bit. I can sprinkle it in. It's a little hard with greens because it gets stuck in the folds and then you get some really salty sections. So you have to really sprinkle it widely. Okay, so I just poured that liquid
Yes.
in one, and the other one we'll send home with someone and they can pour.
Okay.
They can make their own.
There isn't enough. I make some more, but there isn't enough sugar.
Oh, really? Oh, we could come up with something else, but we're fine. You know what?
Or no?
Do we what?
Peel the cucumbers or no?
We did not.
Did not.
But you can.
Yeah.
But usually with pickles, I don't. There's a drawer over there with spoons. We need about 4 spoons. Okay, that looks perfect. So we'll turn that off. And you can just put them right back into this bowl, actually. They're going to go in all the bowls that have, oh, and you know what? The carrot pesto. You know what we need to do now, girls?
Yeah? Yeah?
We need to clean this up before we can all eat. Because I don't like to sit down and eat until my kitchen is clean. You know what I mean? It makes me, doesn't allow me to relax. So,
Something to do.
there's always something, you're right. Because then you have to get up and clean afterward, which is no fun. Sorry. Here, we'll save that, even though.
Gonna work for you, Jenner, huh?
We just told you it was free.
Yeah.
There you go.
Nothing's free, right?
Your shirt. Oh, and there's
Where are the shirts? We need some knives too, I don't know where those are.
for.
These?
Oh, we're gonna put spoons. I gave
spoons.
have the
Oh,
girls
there's-
get spoons. Girls, the spoons go in all these bowls here. And this, I'm actually gonna just. Am I not doing this? I'm gonna dress it over here. Oh, I'm still gonna do a knife demo, so I do still need a cutting board.
Wow.
Sure, that's fine. Okay. Well, that was dumb. Okay. I did Yeah, let me, well, we're probably not going to taste those yet. Okay. I think we might need it. That will leave that way.
in here.
That is,
Put this out if people wanted to taste that.
sure, absolutely. They're the same, it's just that one is sauteed and one is raw. Yep. But the raw needs a little more because it takes up more space.
And we don't have enough vinegar for this one, is that the deal?
Right, we didn't, so someone can take it home and just follow the recipe. Okay, those two are going out.
Do you want this one out also?
I would personally recommend that sit in the fridge for a few days.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, rather than taste. I mean, we can taste it, but it won't taste like a lot right now. Okay. What do I? Ooh.
Okay.
I guess I'll just use this. I'm going to do one last thing before we get started on the eating part, which is the fun part. And thank you for everybody's involvement. That was really helpful. I'm anxious to hear if anybody gleaned anything new or discovered something they didn't know before. I do want to do a quick knife demonstration. Couple things about knives, and you're welcome to come right up here if you really want to see. And hopefully you're not blocking the camera. Okay. So a couple really important things about knives. You don't need 8 different knives. Basically, one good knife is plenty. There's a couple caveats to that. So this is the chef's knife that I use when I'm teaching. I don't use this at home really very much at all. It's really big. I have one that's about this long. It's a 5.5 inch. Typical length of a chef's knife is 6 inches, like this. And this is actually a pretty nice knife. The most important things about a good knife are that it's one piece of metal. It's not a handle attached to a piece of metal. And that it is comfortable in your hand. There are a variety of brands. You can go to a good kitchen store. You can go online and find them. And the prices will range. But the most important thing is that it feels really good in your hand. I have really small hands, and I like this handle for my hand, this knife. But everybody's different. I have friends sometimes who use this who don't like the way it feels in their hand. Wusthof Trident is probably the most popular brand out there. That's a really good brand. My suggestion would be to go to a kitchen store and feel a few and test a few out before you buy one. And then if you want to look online for sales or good deals, you'll know what you want. One knife. One chef's knife, that's all you really need unless you do a ton of deboning. Then a good deboning knife is good to have. A paring knife is a really useful knife to have. So in addition to my chef's knife, I have some nice little paring knives. They're also good for kids if you want your kids to be helping. My almost 15-year-old has just started using a chef's knife. Kids don't need that big of a knife. In fact, a lot of adults don't really. If you have a good sharp paring knife, that's all you really need. And a serrated knife is useful for cutting things like bread. Sometimes things like peaches or tomatoes that have really thin skins and are very soft inside. If you have a good knife and it's sharp, that will do the trick. But if you have a good serrated knife, that's another way to cut those. Sharp knives are really important. So when you buy a new knife, it will be nice and sharp. You need to maintain it. And I've actually brought my sharpener. I'm going to show you how to, not my sharpener, sorry, my honer. Very important distinction. If you start with a sharp knife and you maintain it, then you won't need to get your knife sharpened for a very, very long time. But if you don't maintain it and it gets dull, you won't be able to get it sharp yourself. So that's the thing. And so what I usually tell people is every time you think of it, hone it. Even if it's not every time you use it. If you think of it every time you use it, great. But if it's once every week or once every couple weeks, that's still really important maintenance. So the idea with your honing is that you're working on two angles. You're working on the angles of this part of the blade and then the angle from the back to the front of the blade. And I always go back to front. And for me, it's easiest to actually set this down and have leverage. And I just will go like this. You see people, I'm sure you see fancy chefs going like this. And you can do that. Doesn't work for me. I don't do it fast. I do it nice and slow because then I know I'm really getting a good edge on my knife and I can feel it kind of grinding a little bit. And that's what I want. So I go like this and I have a very firm hold on it. And I just go from back to front. If someone's sharpening their knife every day, then doing this probably works. But I don't do that. So for me, I'm going to do probably up to a dozen sort of slides or strokes on each side. And that's all I need. And then I'll just wipe it off with a cloth or something, and that's it. Then you've got a really sharp knife, so you have to be paying attention to what you're doing. But the truth is, it's a lot easier to cut yourself with a dull knife because your dull knife will slip off of something that your sharp knife won't. And if you do cut yourself, the cut is cleaner. I promise. So the main thing with cutting is you want to, first of all, act as if the tip of your knife is like attached, like a hinge to your cutting board. So my hand is not going to be moving all over the place. My knife is going to stay pretty much in one place and just rock back and forth as if it's hinged. Can you hear how sharp that is? The next thing is, when you're cutting vegetables especially, you're cutting things that are all different shapes, right? And so we want to get a flat edge. That's the first thing we want to do. So usually with a potato this size, I might cut right down the middle because it's pretty small. But with something like an onion or a pepper, especially, that's going to be very odd shaped, I want to get a flat edge because then whatever I'm cutting is going to stay put. It's not going to roll all over the place. Kids especially, that is a really important first thing, is get a flat edge, because I teach a lot of kids and I watch them trying to cut stuff that's rolling around the cutting board, and that's what they do, even with the paring knife. So it's not going to go anywhere. The next thing, and there's sort of two techniques here, and the conventional wisdom, the traditional way to teach people about their fingers is you've got your knife here, and then you're going to use kind of your knuckles as a guide against the blade, right? So your fingertips are back. They're not sticking out like this. They're back. And your knuckles are kind of guiding your blade, so you can go like this. And you know that your fingers are not going to get any closer. I have very small hands. I don't like to do that. It's just tight for me. So what I do is I put my fingertips at the very back of what I'm holding, and I kind of do that. Or, see, I got another flat edge. I'm going to turn it on the bigger flat edge. I will do this. So that, because if I've got a nice flat edge and a nice sharp knife, then most likely what I'm cutting won't move around. So I can put my hand up here, which means my fingers are nowhere near the blade, and I have a lot of stability. So that's really good. And if you're cutting something that's really hard, now you can obviously use a food processor or something, and Tess has these really great little hand choppers that are really nice for kids, again, because then you don't have to get near a blade. But if I use that technique with this, and I have a lot of firmness with what I'm doing, I might lose a few, but for the most part, I can keep what I'm cutting right there and chop it really small. So especially when I'm cutting small things, this technique really helps because it keeps things really stable. Most important thing though is that I'm moving either the blade or what I'm cutting, but I'm not moving the tip of the knife around. And I'm also not whacking my blade against the cutting board. And then speed is not your goal. So while you might see people who do this really quickly, that's because they've been doing it for a long time. They're really, really comfortable. The goal is efficiency. And when you're efficient, then you will get faster. But if you start trying to be fast before you're really good at handling your knife, you probably just make a mess. So that's it.
Do you especially like a wooden board? Or
I love wooden cutting boards. I do not like glass. That's a really popular, and it's just loud, and I don't like the feeling. The health department has concerns about germs, although now I just heard something new that wood is now okay. In your home, everything is fine, but you do need to clean it, and you might consider using separate cutting boards for your meat than you do for your vegetables. But really just cleaning, and you can use lemon or bleach or some acid, and you should be fine. I love cutting on wood, though. Any last questions before we taste everything? Okay, well, thank you, everyone. This looks delicious. All right, you guys want to start us off? You're still cleaning. Thank you so much. Oh, turning this off now.
Thanks for tuning in. This has been Supper from the Garden with Chef Jenny Breen. This was brought to you by the Sawtooth Mountain Clinic in Grand Marais, Minnesota, and is part of our Everyone Eats Beans series. I'm just trying to provide people access to the knowledge and skills to cook with garden fresh produce. If you'd like to listen to this following or check out the archive, you can do so by the website www.sawtoothmountainclinic.org. And thank you to our sponsor tonight, which was Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Minnesota.